Hi, I'm Brian Murphy from Sound Porter Mastering. I wanted to use this video to walk through a few of the challenges that I have as far as audio routing through my computer and my DAW, and then regarding my two audio devices. The challenge that I run into most is that I've got multiple different things that I want to be able to do with the audio. The first one is room correction. In other words, I've got an acoustically treated room that's quite inert, but there's still that last little 10% that I would like to address. That last little 10% can be addressed via room correction software, which is what I'm using, but that only needs to address the audio going out through the speakers from my benchmark DAC3B. The other audio interface that I've got here is a Mo28D router. This is really just a digital router. It takes USB information from the computer, and then I can route the audio anywhere I need to go. That feeds my analog mastering chain, which is my converter here, through the mastering chain, back to the converter, and then back over to the Mo2, and then back into the computer. So I have two audio devices. I have an analog mastering chain. I've got room correction software on the output to my speakers. I also want to have a meter that's running here that is also not affected by the room correction software. Plus, I also have a set of headphones over here that sometimes I want to listen to those headphones. And again, that should not be affected by the room correction software because headphones don't need the room correction the same way. And then finally, I would like to be able to use the analog mastering chain in two different ways. One is called a pitch and catch, where I'm pitching from one track and then I'm catching on another one. I'm recording on another track. Or I would like to be able to use this external effect, which is like an analog out and in, just like an effects loop for a guitarist that sends and uses my analog mastering chain as an effects loop and then receives, brings it back into the DAW. Okay, so these are my real 5 challenges that I want to try to address. Now in my DAW, as it is with many DAWs, there's only room for one audio device. To manage that takes a little bit of clever engineering in some other ways. What I found online was a company called Rogue Amoeba. They've created some software that does this for you. So this is a program called Loopback. It's a virtual interface. Now, if I create a new virtual interface, and you can see it here, it appears as a pass-through device, as a source into this virtual router. Then it has an output, and that output can be routed to any other audio device. Okay, in my case, I want to be able to use that. So I'm going to select here my audio device, Loopback Audio. Sometimes, by the way, depending on your DAW, you may have to restart your DAW to be able to see this, but it still shows up in your system, in this case Mac OS. It shows up as a virtual interface here. You could create a virtual interface under Utilities and Audio MIDI Setup. You can create what's called an aggregate device. I tried doing this. It performed. It did the function, but I found it to be a little glitchy in nature, and I just couldn't really trust it. So Rogue Amoeba, because they wrote the software for Loopback, it takes care of that, and they've put in the engineering to make it work the way it should. Okay, so I've got my song here and it's playing, and you see that it's going through the virtual interface now, but I don't hear any sound. What I can do is I can create a monitor here. That's my benchmark. That's my output to my speakers. Okay, that's great, but I can't really do room correction software here, so I need to delete it here. And I'm going to use another program, also from Rogue Amoeba, called Audio Hijack. Audio Hijack is a neat little program that it can hijack audio from any application or any other output source, and basically anywhere from inside the system. What I want to do is I want to stop that session because that's my normal session. I want to start a new one. We'll use a blank template. Okay, I'll go under here, under Info, and I'll name it Session 1. Okay. Then under Blocks, we'll create an input device, and I'll use the output of the Loopback audio to go into this input device. And my OCD kicks in here, so I want to select channel 1 and 2 because that's what I'm selecting here in the Loopback interface. Okay, now I've brought this into Audio Hijack, but I need to do something with it. This is where my room correction software comes in. Okay, so I bring in this plugin. And by the way, you can plug in any plugin from the system here, because if you see this, look at this. A lot of Waves plugins and plugins from other places, and you can do whatever you want with it. Then finally, I'm going to put in an output device, and this I will set to my benchmark to go to my speakers. Now, with Audio Hijack, you have to click Run, and you can just let this run indefinitely, but you have to actually run it before it's going to play the audio out. Okay, and I've got audio. Okay, so that takes care of getting the audio out of WaveLab into a virtual interface and then pumping that interface over to Audio Hijack so that it connects to my room correction software and then my speakers. For the time being, let's just let that go for now. Okay, now the next challenge I have is I need to route the audio in a different fashion over through the analog mastering chain and back again. Okay, this is a real trick. Okay, the first thing that I can do is I can say, okay, let me look at my 8D router because that's what connects my audio mastering chain. Now, bear in mind, this could just be any USB-based digital to analog converter, but because my converter does not support USB, I use this to connect to it via AES. And AES gets me where I need to go between these two. So AES 1 and 2, or sorry, AES 3 and 4 go from the Motu 8D over to the converter, through the analog mastering chain back to the converter again, and then it comes back to the 8D on AES 1 and 2. Okay, so we've got that set. Now, let's create a monitor. This is a way to take the audio out of the virtual interface and then over to the hardware device, which is what we're doing here. Okay, I see that. So, and you can see my mastering chain wakes up. So I'm getting the audio through the mastering chain. It's coming back into the DAW here. As I can see in my router here, I'm getting both in and out. So I'm having audio go through the mastering chain back to the 8D, but how do I get it back into WaveLab? How do I get it back into my DAW? What I need to do is create a source here, and we'll create that source, and we get feedback. So what I've done is I've created a loop, an unfortunate loop, and it's a loop that I don't want to use. So I'm going to try something here that would make more sense. And to do that, what I need to do is create another output. In fact, I'm going to create two, and I'll go into why I did it this way. The first thing I want to do is I want to delete these wires here. I want to delete these wires because I don't want to use those. I want to use channel 3 and 4 to come out of my DAW to go through the analog mastering chain. Again, this is for a pitch and a catch. All right. Now when I do that, I'm still using 1 and 2 here. Okay. I need to go into WaveLab and I need to set that up to use this extra bus. So we're going to add another bus here. Call it analog chain. And I'll set the output of this to 3 and 4. Okay, but the first challenge here is do I need to go back here into preferences all the time to set this and change it, move it over, and then move it back when I don't want to use it? There's a functionality within WaveLab, which is very clever for this, speaker arrangement too. So I can use speaker arrangements, and what this does is it creates the possibility that I can switch between these two here very easily. And by the way, a keystroke, 2P, 1P, and remember those keystrokes. We'll come back to those. Okay, so I go to 2P. Now I'm sending on channels 3 and 4. You see that? And it's going to the 8D. Okay, but the 8D is not getting anything back. Why not? I see it go through here in 3 and 4, 1 and 2. I don't see anything. It's because I turned off my mastering chain because of the feedback. Okay, let's let that warm up for a second. All right, now we're getting the audio back. That's fine. Okay, so I get the audio back here, but where do I need to pump that? What I can do is, let's make this 0.5 and 6 here. We've got 5 and 6 there. Okay, and then I want to go back into here, and I want to add a return chain or a recording. Instead of loopback 1 and 2, I want to use audio 5 and 6. Okay, now that I've done that, I should have audio coming back into here, but I don't hear anything. So I've got another challenge here, is I need a way for me to be able to hear what it is that I'm sending out. In other words, the analog mastering chain is returning the audio back to me, and I can record that in Wavelab. The problem is I can't hear it. So I need a way to solve that. I can solve that here with Audio Hijack. If I add another input device, because again, this is what I'm listening to, right? So that's all I need to do is just get it to my monitoring system. I can put in here 8D, or actually just do loopback audio. And we're going to use 5 and 6. So I'm going to hijack channel 5 and 6. But I don't want both of these interfaces up all the time, because I'll get some echo. That's unfortunate. I don't want to do that. So let me disable that one and leave this one enabled. Now I should be, I can hear the audio. Perfect. Okay, that's great. But now the next thing I need to do is I need to be able to record it. I can record this audio here, and I can tell it's being affected when I make my movements on the analog mastering chain. Okay, so there's my pitch and catch. So we've solved a couple of things. First is I wanted to be able to use two different audio devices, one to send through room correction software out to the room. The other I want to feed into the analog mastering chain, come back into this audio device, and then be fed back into the DAW, and to record it as a catch. All right, that's great. Do that. Let me go back to speaker configuration 1, and then I want to add the external effects, but I can't do that yet because I need to add devices for this. So let me add a bus for that, and we'll use the same chain, the same path that I used for pitch and catch, because it's really doing the same thing. Okay, now I've got those set. Let me go back into my DAW here, and okay. Now I've got my external effects. Voila. That's working. Okay, so as long as I use speaker configuration 1, I'm using the external effects. This is basically an in-the-box situation because, quite frankly, since this is a plugin, it's really in the box. So pitch and catch is one configuration that I'm using, and in the box, using this external effects plugin, that's an in-the-box situation. And I don't want to confuse those. And I'll come back to those, why those are important in just a little bit. Okay, so the last challenge that I have is I have a meter. I would like to be able to get anything that's coming out of the DAW, or rather anything that I've passed through the analog mastering chain, or if I'm in the box, anything coming out of the DAW, I want to be able to pass to the meter, but I don't want it to be affected by room correction software. Okay. Well, the meter is connected to the Motu 8D. You could use a third device if you wanted to do this, but I happen to be able to use it here over a SPDIF connection to the meter. All right. So let me go back into here, and I'm going to add SPDIF connection. Okay. The only issue here is that I'm looking at 1 and 2 from the computer, which is actually here. That doesn't help me. And then plus 2, if I put wires over here to that, I'm still only getting this audio here. So I'm not getting the audio that's going through the analog mastering chain. I'm only getting the audio that's coming through here. So let me delete these, and we're going to do something else. In the 8D, there's functionality to add as many channels as you want, but I'm going to add those channels, and then I'm going to put those on 3 and 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. So 1 and 2 is the analog mastering chain. 3 and 4 goes to the meter. And you can see here where it goes spit. By the way, inputs, outputs, inputs coming into the 8D and then going out this way. And then I've got where I'm coming on AES 1 and 2 here, going out to the computer. It's kind of a little confusing grid to look at, but it works. Okay, now I only have 2 channels here because I just added 2 more channels to the 8D, but I only have 2 channels here. I need to just delete that and use the 8D again. There we go. Okay, the problem is if you remember, I've got 3 and 4 that are going to the meter. Okay. Well, that means now I've got my analog mastering chain is connected to the meter. Well, that doesn't really work, so I need to change that. Let me swap those around. Kind of a little arduous process here. Or I'm just doing it wrong. Okay, I want to put my meter here. And then my analog mastering chain here on channels 1 and 2. But then I also want to take my 5 and 6 outputs, anything coming back to the DAW, I'd like to run those to the meter. And voila, there we go. So the meter wakes up, as you can see here, it's woken up. And anytime, if I switch between 1P and 2P, I still get the meter update here. If I'm switched to 2P, that means I'm getting what's coming back from the analog mastering chain. If I'm in speaker configuration 1, which is in the box, then I'm getting what's coming out of the DAW. And it's one or the other. Okay, now what I didn't show you already is that when I'm in the box, I need to use this audio device. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that to be called Wavelab. These names are important. All right, set that to on. And we're going to change this to 8D. And we'll turn it off for now. In the cases where I'm switching between speaker configurations, I really also need to switch these 2 devices. That creates a little bit of a headache. There's multiple things you have to kind of juggle and do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this session here, and we're going to go into scripting, which is not really that bad. By the way, this loopback configuration right here, this is my final configuration. I don't need to do anything else for loopback. So we're going to close that out. And if you close loopback altogether, it doesn't go away. It's kind of a set and forget. So when you boot up the machine, it does the same thing every time. Audio Hijack, you can set that to run under its own settings, run on its own when it's booted up. Auto run right here on launch. So you can have it run there. And then what you can do is you can go into Apple settings if you're using a Mac and have it launch this application upon boot. So that makes that easy to happen every time that you start the machine. And again, you can just let this just run indefinitely. Okay, this is my final configuration for my sound porter mastering chain in Audio Hijack. I've got the 2 interfaces here. Notice I have named them. Okay, I've got a meter here that appears up here, so I can tell that Audio Hijack is receiving something. Sound ID, that's my room correction. And then I've got an extra EQ because flat, kind of a flat frequency response in a room is not perfect. So I want to tailor this just kind of with a little bit of a tilt EQ to give it a little bit more what my ears want to hear. And then my benchmark output. So I need to be able to switch between these 2 blocks. And then at times when I want to use my headphones, that's one of the challenges, I want to be able to disable Sound ID and that EQ, because I don't want those 2 affecting the sound going into the headphones. So here's what I'll do. In Audio Hijack, it comes with a script library. And by the way, their documentation on the website is actually pretty good, but it does take a little bit of experimentation. So I've got 4 scripts here, and these are dead simple. In fact, the only thing they do is they call out the name of a block, like sound ID here, sound ID here, and they just set it to disabled or enabled. And the way they work is it's saying if the block name is sound ID, then block disabled equals true. That means make it disabled, true. Or if the block is named Pro Q3, also disable it. That means set disabled to true. That's what that one does. And if you look at this one, to enable them, it's the opposite. I'm just setting those 2 disabled lines to false. All right, now for the 8D switch input, to switch these 2 blocks, I have the block name disabled true, so that means disable that one. And then the other one to set that one to false, which would enable it. And then vice versa here. Set one to false, which enables it, and then set the other one to disabled true. That's it. That's what the scripts do. All right, now, how do we launch these scripts? How do we kick them off? Well, in Mac OS, there's a program called Shortcuts. And I've got 4 shortcuts. Let's start with disable room calibration. All I've done here, and if I were to start a new one, I just click plus here and it would create a new block, and then you can rename it or change the icon. All right, when I come in here, what I do is I select Apps, select Audio Hijack because it recognizes Audio Hijack has scripts, and then you drag Run a Script into the screen here. I've already done that. Then you click here, select the script you want to run, easy enough. But then you have to do Show More here, select the session. That's the name of the session up here. Okay, so I've selected that one as Sound Porter. If I run this, those 2 blocks right there disable. Okay, easy enough. Okay, and then the opposite is true for enable the room calibration, and they come right back. That's easy. Also, what I can show you in here is you can do this from pin to the menu bar under information here, or you can add a keystroke. So if I add a keystroke, see, and then it re-enables. Okay, very easy. So then I have my pitch and catch and in the box. This is why I mentioned those would be important later, because these scripts change multiple things. They change the script that I'm running in Audio Hijack to now switch to the 8D input and disable the Wavelab input. Again, Show More, Sound Porter session. Okay, but then I've got these 2 little scripts that run. These are AppleScript. You can probably do this in Java. I don't know how to do it in Java, so I did it in AppleScript. The first part of this just basically says, Wavelab is in the background, bring it to the front, activate it. So you can see here, tell application Wavelab Pro 12 to activate. The second part of this is saying, tell application system events. Now, anything that happens on the keyboard is essentially a system event. Well, then I want to tell process Wavelab, by the way, you're going to receive some keystrokes from system events. And the keystroke you're going to receive here is 2P. That switches to my speaker configuration 2. If I run this, I switch to speaker configuration 2 here, and then in Audio Hijack, I have switched to the other interface. I'll go and run the other script, which was here. It does the opposite. All I'm doing is doing the same thing, except I'm changing the input again with the separate script in Audio Hijack, but then I'm running the other 2 same AppleScripts, but I'm just sending a 1P now to Wavelab. And if I go and change that back to 1, and I'm back to that interface. And again, I could do this with keystrokes. So if I do 1, that sets me to in the box, which that's where I was, 2. So it switched there, and then you can see the speaker configuration here. Go back to 1, and that's it. Now, one thing I didn't tell you in this script, there's a weird little idiosyncrasy. If Wavelab is up front, now this could be the case with any DAW, but when Wavelab is up front and you try to send these keystrokes through AppleScript, it just doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. So I have a separate block in here to just hide it. It's just another function within the shortcuts. I just hide the app. And then this works because it activates it and then it runs the keystroke. So yeah, why that works and why it's working like that, I don't know. And again, I have this all pinned to the taskbar so I can do it here. I can run those scripts here, or I can use those keystrokes. So these are the 5 problems that I've had to solve using Rogue Amoeba Loopback and Audio Hijack. And sometimes you can actually buy those as a bundle if you kind of keep watch on their website or just keep up with their news. But these 2 pieces of software really solved a lot of problems for me. And the main one being is that I want to be able to use 2 separate audio devices, and I want to do different things with those, and then be able to quickly change how I'm functioning within my route flow in my computer. And these took care of it. So I'm hoping, for you, if you have any of these kind of audio routing issues in a mastering chain or in a studio or something like that, these are definitely some programs that are worth looking at. And they're not a sponsor of this or anything like that, but I loved them and I thought it was good enough that I wanted to do a video to show how I solved these problems. There's so much more to the software, so I didn't go into all of those details, but it's definitely worth checking out. It's worth the money, and it's definitely solved these issues for me forever. So if you like this video, please hit the like button, and thanks for watching.